Hey, what's up? It's Hillary. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be updating my reading journal for March and April. If you're new here, welcome and thank you for stopping by. If you're not new here, welcome back. It has been a few weeks since I posted a video. I ran into some storage issues with the video files and had to purchase some equipment and exercise some serious patience while I moved files around. I don't have everything completely sorted yet, but I finally got things to a better place and I can now edit videos without my computer crashing every few minutes. Anyway, into the content of today's video. This is one of my first videos where I go through my 2026 reading journal and update all of the pages for 2 months. So first I start by cutting out the covers for all of the books I read in those months and the books I chose for my TBRs. Then I have all of these cut out and ready to go for the various pages they belong to. So starting from the beginning of my journal, I have a monthly statistics page where for each month I put how many books I read, number of pages I read, my average rating, etc. Down at the bottom I have space to mark how many books made me cry and how many were written by a diverse author. Then I have a shelf control page where I track how many unread books I own. My reason for making this is because I do want to prioritize reading books that I own. While collecting books is a separate hobby from reading for me, there is a limit and I don't love having more than 100 unread books at any time because that makes things feel slightly unattainable. Then I have monthly spreads where I record more detailed information for each month. I first check off the books that I read that were on my TBR, and then I go into the pages per day page. Now I track all of my reading data in a custom Notion database that I created for myself, and for this page I am basically recreating something that I already have in Notion. So while I do love these pages when they're done, I don't necessarily love the process, and I'm realizing my love for data visualization really only exists when I'm creating charts on a computer and not manually. Then I have this calendar page where I write out which books I read on which days. Again, this is something I'm recreating from something that is already in Notion, and every year as I do these reading journals, I find things that I love and I find things that I just don't really enjoy, and it just feeds into what I decide to do the following year. So we may not end up seeing these pages in future years' reading journals. I'm just not sure. Now we're moving into April, and first, I'm putting in the book covers for my April TBR, which had Project Hail Mary, Aisha, Mayhem and the Mortal, Starshipped, The Right Move, Devil of the Deep, Green and Deadly Things, Big Girl Blitz, and Game On. And I ended up reading all but 2. Some of my favorites for this month were Starship, The Right Move, Big Girl Blitz, and Game On. A heavy romance month for me. Now we're going into April's pages per day. There was one day early in April where I read 468 pages that day. I'm guessing that was a weekend, because then we also had 2 days in April where I read 0 pages, and that was during Coachella. Now, I don't know how consistent I am with tracking my average pages per day, if I'm being honest, because like my total pages for the month, I just use the number of pages that are in the books and add it all up. Whereas for this pages per day, sometimes I'll start a book and then for whatever reason move to something else and then come back to it and start over. And I do count the pages again if I start over. And so the numbers don't always add up entirely. I kind of need to figure out a consistent way to calculate. Here we are going to our calendar page for April, and the books that took me the longest to read in April were Project Hail Mary and Rites of the Starling. There were a couple of books that I ended up reading in just a couple of days, like Game On and Face Off. Okay, next I'm putting covers in for my May TBR. For May, I want to read Burn Down Master's House, Honey, Stage Set for Villains, Score, which is a new release by Kennedy Ryan, I, Medusa, The Everlasting, The Ballad of Falling Dragons, Seek the Traitor's Son, and Still Into You. Alright, moving on to a new spread. This is my Read the Books I Already Own spread, where I track all of the books I purchase, and as I read them, I color them in. So first I'm adding in all of the physical books and audiobooks that I purchased in March, then adding the ones I purchased in April, which was a lot because Indie Bookstore Day was in April. Once I add all the books I purchased, I can go back and color in the books that I read, and I do try to go in a very specific color order, so it is a little bit of a pain to first identify the books that I read and then figure out what color they should be, but I do think in the end, the way that it looks will make it worth the effort. The next spread of pages coming up is going to be books read by color. This is where I put all of the book covers for the books I read, and they are sorted by color because last year I did it by genre and the pages ended up looking kind of messy to me, so I wanted a better way to make this visually appealing. Plus, the entire theme for this year's reading journal was sort of color coded. Like I picked a different color for each month and all of the pages for that month are in that color, and then there's a few places throughout the journal where it's just very color coded, so this felt very appropriate. Okay, next I have a series tracker spread, so I got to check off a couple of books there. The last thing I'm filling in is my reading mosaic. I cannot claim credit for this idea. I saw other people doing this online and I wanted to try it, but I wanted to make the categories meaningful and suited to my reading goals. So the way this works is each book I read is represented by a square on this page, and each square is divided into 4 triangles. The top triangle is for genre, the right triangle is for subgenre, the left triangle is for number of pages, and the bottom triangle is for representation. Now, I think this was a fun idea, but in execution it gets pretty tricky because I can only color each triangle in with one color. So sometimes I have to choose between 2, or sometimes nothing really fits, so I'm just picking the closest. And then for representation, sometimes there is none, so those stay blank. I highly doubt I will be doing this type of spread again in future years, or at least not with these categories, because, for example, I read mostly fantasy and romance, and I coded both of those in shades of pink. So that top triangle is very often pink, which kind of bothers me just because there's a lack of variation. And then for representation, I did, BIPOC and queer categories kind of broken down in detail. And so there's very often more than one represented in the book, and I just have to choose. And I don't love that. But I will say, as I fill this out more, it's starting to look pretty cool. So I guess if at the end of the year, if I like the way it looks, there's a chance I would try it again next year. Just, change up the categories a little bit. Time will tell. Anyway, that is everything that I need to update for March and April. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. I do have footage for several videos ready to be edited, so I hope to be getting those out to you as soon as I can. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.